Hello, Cincinnati, and welcome to Cincinnati Soccer Talk's newest podcast, Guido Cast, as we talk about all things that happened on the field that we saw that a certain referee may have missed.
Wait, this is only an hour-long show. How are we going to do that? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Coach, and we will have a segment in here on that. We will talk about it, but no. In all seriousness, welcome to episode 421 of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Here with a great cast, as always. Coach and Jose are joining me to talk about what we did see. We'll talk a little bit about the Atlanta match that we saw. Other people may not have seen the formation changes, the balls in the air that keepers took out players, and all of that fun stuff. And we'll get a little preview of the Dallas match ahead of Wednesday's game at TQL Stadium. So welcome into the show, Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Coach, welcome back. It's always good to have you here to talk tactically, but I really enjoy our pre-show talks to get the real coach coming out here.
And of course, I get so fired up that I just interrupt your intro. So, whatever. But yeah, happy to be here. Always happy to come on and talk some ball and pretend like I know what I'm doing here.
Pretend like you know what you're doing. Isn't that what we're all doing for sure? Welcome back, Jose. Welcome to the show, man. I'm looking forward to, based on our conversations offline yesterday during the match and after the match, I'm really looking forward to having you on tonight.
Yeah, my wife told me, hey, now remember, and you just control that temper of yours. Don't yell, don't scream, don't go nuts. And I promise I won't do that, but I will have some thoughts about what happened yesterday.
I hope you do. We'll get into those here in just a moment. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Apollo Home, who says FCC looked uncomfortable away from home over the weekend, and we want you to stay comfortable in your home with the $29 HVAC cooling tune-up from Apollo Home. Also, just for CST listeners, Apollo Home's offering a $1,101 off a new AC unit. That's right, folks. That's $1,101 off. That's a heck of a coupon, and that's CST's gift just for you. Give Apollo a call, send them a text, or schedule online at apollohome.com. All right, guys, we are going to get into the match here a little bit, but first we want to start with our best and worst because there is a lot we could talk about. Let's just hit the tip of the iceberg here with our best and worst. Coach, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so I think for my best was just that I actually saw some repeatable patterns of play, especially up that right side with Orishano and Buka and Dado and Kevin Denke getting involved, and actually some interchanges and stuff where it looked like there was an actual tactical idea over there. And so I love to see that because I think it's a building block that the team can use to kind of move forward from here. My worst is going to be settling for long shots because depending on what site you look at, FC Cincinnati had either 29 or 30 shots in the game, which you think, whoa, that's great. Well, 12 of those shots were from outside of the box. And those are just such low percentage chances that it's like, any team can have 30 shots if anytime they can see the goal when they're on the offensive half. And if you're Orishano, sometimes when you're not even in the offensive half, if you just let it rip. And the biggest thing is that they are passing up opportunities to play their teammates into dangerous spots in the box to hit those shots. Early in the second half, Orishano dribbled like coast to coast and was leading a 5v3 break and had Evander on one side and Denke on the other side wide open, and he shoots from 20 yards, which is a 0.1 XG chance. It's like you could have played your two best players into the box or settle for a 10% goal chance, and this team just settles too often.
That's too close of a shot, though, for Orishano, if I remember from last year. So maybe his XG goes up if he hits it 30 yards before he gets there. Yeah. No, good takes. We'll talk more about that, especially Dado and those repeatable patterns later in the show. Jose, your best and worst.
Well, building on Dado, we saw several facets of him yesterday, I think. More creativity. He took more risks. He was, distributing the ball. He was going after them. He was dribbling. I like what I saw. Now, yes, he's Dado, and he would, sometimes tends to lose the ball. But in general, really liked what I'm seeing from him. He just needs more minutes. I think if he gets more minutes, gets more confidence, I think we'll start seeing an even stronger Dado. Now, the question is going to be, who do you pair him with? And we'll talk more about that later, I'm sure. I also, on an honorable mention, he scored a goal off of a corner kick.
Yeah, we did.
Those are rare. I mean, rare for any team, right? But especially for FCC. And so I was happy to see that. And actually, my wife, she didn't watch the game; she was busy, but she did watch when that happened. She goes, "Off a corner kick, we did that." So, hey, yeah. Now the worst was Hag's injury. I mean, independently of how it happened, what happened, I think the worst is that we're going to have him out for several weeks. And to me, that is a big loss. We know he's not the best center back on the field. We know he's not the fastest, most skilled. But this year, to me, he has played above my expectations anyway. And just his leadership, his charisma, I think, is going to be missed. But also in the worst, I have to say, and we'll talk more about this, the way the team just fell apart after he left the field. That's just inexcusable, and we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm going to throw some up here on the screen here. Rupesh says his best for all those that missed the match. His best is he didn't get to see the game, and he agrees with you. Nick getting injured and hospitalized. Was still in Atlanta in the hospital earlier this morning. I don't know if he's home at this point or not. So, and then Jay Yates says his best is the fact that Twellman recognized what a crap ref Guido is and said it on air, that there's no foul. That's a foul. That's a foul. He said that multiple times. And worst, having to deal with this incompetence all year is what he has to say. Again, it's the Guido cast tonight. Yeah. I'll say this, my best, I wanted to talk a little bit about Dotto, and I think we've covered that and we'll cover it more. I was excited to see him get the start. Orishano, to me, I think played one of his better games this last match, and you may agree or disagree with that. I don't know, but I saw him at least early in the match dishing the ball a little bit sooner than he has been, like dribbling into tight spaces and then not knowing what to do. I think maybe that had to do with, as Coach mentioned, Dotto playing on that side, someone that's a little bit more creative of a player that he could play off of. We'll get into that, I think, later, but I just think Orishano played a better game overall. Sure, he took some shots that maybe he didn't need to take, but what we've seen from him is that he's a shot creator on his own. Like, he creates his own shots. And so seeing him, at least in the middle of the field, creating shots that were closer to goal than dribbling to the corner and getting stuck and not knowing what to do. And do I beat this guy 4 more times before I cross it? So I think he played a much better match. So I'll give him the shout for my best. My worst, there's a lot to talk about, but there was the one play where there's the miscue with Matt Miazga and Roman Celentano. Miazga thinks Roman's coming out. Roman's calling him. He's backpedaling and calling Miazga to chase and to follow. And then if you watch the end of that, Miazga's up in Celentano's face screaming at him.
Yep.
And I think that was on Miazga at that point.
Yep.
And so I just, that one play notwithstanding, like, I think that's a sign of, is Miazga who he was last year before pre-injury and the year before? Like, is he able to keep up? Is he frustrated that no one's keeping up with Emmanuel Latte Lath on that play? I get it. You get in his way, you do what you can. But I don't know that Miazga's up to where he was before. And I think, to me, that's my worst going into, the second half of the season. Is he going to get back to where he was? Certainly his leadership is welcome and recognized on the field, but physically he may still have a little bit to go. So with that, guys, let's get into a little bit more of the match here. The Atlanta, again, if you saw the match, you watched the recaps, Atlanta comes away with a 4-2 victory. I think the fourth goal came in the 94th minute. So just kind of at that point, you kind of write that one off. So Cincinnati's already losing. Nick Hagglund goes down with an injury, which we'll talk about. The team has been creating chances in the first 10 minutes. And in the 10th minute, 11th minute, there's a collision, dirty collision, just a straight up collision. We don't know. We'll talk about that. Hagglund goes down. And the team falls apart, as Jose alluded to in his worst there. Guys, what did you see? What was the change? Was it we miss Nick Hagglund and we don't know what to do without him on the field? Or was the team just struggling to adjust and adapt after that, having a new player come in and Robinson shift over, Hidebe come in and play on the left side? Like, what was it that just threw the team into a tailspin for a few minutes there.
We'll speculate a lot on, I know. And, we weren't on the pitch, so we don't really understand what was going through everybody's mind. But from where I was sitting, there were lots of leaders on that pitch after Hagglund left. I mean, you have Miazga, you have Robinson, you have Evander. I mean, these are all experienced players, have certain leadership qualities. At that moment, one of them or all of them should have stepped up and said, hey, okay, we just lost him. Great guy, charisma, we love him. We got to focus. We have a set play now here. Let's keep our mind in the game. So to me, it was just a total lack or disappearing of any kind of leadership. And then somebody saying, okay, let's take this bull by the horns. We're down one guy. Okay, we have a Debbie in here. He had to be rushed in. Okay, but let's focus on what's going on. And to me, it was just a lack of leadership on the pitch at that moment to rally the troop and say, we're still playing, guys. Let's keep our heads in the game.
I don't think you can put this on the back line at all, these two goals, those two goals that happened right after Haggs' injury. Certainly there's a little bit of disruption there, and I don't want to downplay that. But that set piece goal, if you watch it happen, Kevin Danke just is like not concerned at all about trying to defend that play. Like literally he's in the line with everybody else. They're not man-to-man, so there's two players for in between him and I think it's Hadeb at that point. Hadeb gets pushed underneath the ball a little bit by Williams, like nudge, not a foul. They're never going to call that, right? But nudge. And Kevin Danke just stops and is just watching from 7 or 8 yards up the pitch at that point. He is supposed to be in there bumping those guys, not letting them get a free run. That's why Lucas Engel has to come from 3 players back and try to get in there to make that header because Danke stopped. And then the second one, certainly you can put a lot of blame on Engel for that one, for playing so far inside and leaving Saba so much room. But watch where Fortune comes from to score that goal. He's running from the left wing next to Orishano. He runs into the box and Orishano stops and just lets him waltz in there. So then, it's weird how the ball goes through there. I don't know how it gets through all those legs, but then Fortune has a tap in, and it's because Orishano was just not concerned about defending. I hesitate to put all of the blame like I am on Kevin Danke and Luca Orishano because there were a lot of other things that went wrong there. But I used to do these how they happened articles, and I would assign percentages of blame. And I think I'd be given the lion's share of the percentage, even if it's only like not a majority, but a plurality. Like 40% of the blame gets on those players, and then the other 60% is divided up a little bit amongst a bunch of different players.
Yeah, I even think I think it was their third goal that was off a corner. It was Orishano defending on whoever, I forget who was out there, that headed it back across the goal. Yeah, now he's not able to jump with him for sure, but they picked out a guy that there's a mismatch here to put the ball back across. So I think I want to go back to that first goal, that set piece goal, and no disrespect to Celentano. He's been playing great, but I think that was a ball that he could have come out and had, and I know others in our chat disagree with that, but that ball is 4 yards off the line coming towards you. I know you've got guys running at you, but I think that's a play that he can make, and he should have gotten there at that point. I'm not putting blame on him. I just think he could have changed the play in that moment and prevented potentially that goal from going in. So regardless of what the defense was doing and where Kevin Danke was standing and watching.
And that's my point on leadership. I mentioned 3 guys on leadership, but really it's like everyone on the team that has some experience say, hey, it's time to get back in the game here. And if that includes Celentano, well, then yes, we should include him there. Just to me, it was just a total, I'm going to call it collapse of leadership on the pitch in the heat of the moment. And that's when you need it the most. I mean, because these things are going to happen game after game. And when playoffs come, it becomes even more unpredictable. So you got to have that cold mentality. Say, okay, we just got slammed. Now let's keep our head in the game.
And not to jump ahead, but apparently Celentano could have just come up and just straight up cleared Williams out and not even made a play on the ball, or maybe just like took Miles Robinson and chucked him into Williams, because as long as there's another player there, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, sorry. It's all fair as a goalkeeper, man. It's all fair unless it's against my team. Right. So let's talk about, just for a moment, the play that took Nick Hagglund out. Well, maybe I don't want to dwell on this, but I do want to touch on it because it was a significant moment, turning point in that game. I will say this: in the moment, and Coach called me out on this in our chat. I'm watching the game, and I said, I didn't see much in that. They collided. Nick went down. Something must have happened because Nick's holding his ribs, but I didn't see much in it. And you were like something about, a full-on two-hand shove. And I was like, yeah, I didn't see it because they didn't show the replay right then. When I saw the replay later in the match when they showed it, to me, it looked like Emmanuel Latte Lath squared him up. You could see his hand, his right fist above his right shoulder, and then come across and hit Hagglund, who was on his left side. It looked dirty. It looked intentional to me. Shocked it was not called. Coach?
Yeah. If you watch his back leg too, so his arms are one thing, but if you watch his back leg, he like springs it. He loads it up to launch his body into Hagglund. You know what I mean? So like you actually see him like gear up to spring into Hagglund. So it was definitely intentional, not to hurt Nick Hagglund. I don't believe that for a second, but I think that he did the thing that you see with the forward a lot, where the guy's in my way and I won't get carded if I just like ram him, and he did that. And he should have been carded. And then the fact that he elbows Matt Miazga in the face, not that much longer, and the foul was called that time, but still no card. I mean, it's egregious that Latte Lath walked out of the match without a yellow card. Like he punctured a guy's lung, broke a rib, punctured a lung, and elbowed a guy in the face. And even if any of them were intention, they were all with enough force. And you are responsible on the soccer pitch for your body and what it does, whether you mean to do it or not.
Yeah. Jose, I know this was one you were fired up about last night. I think you even made a social media post about this, and it sounds like maybe you've calmed a little bit on this one. Am I right or am I wrong?
So I have calmed myself because, guys, one of the things about me is that in the moment, I can just erupt like a volcano. Not just watching soccer, but in many aspects of my life. As some of the people that used
really
to work
surprises
for me,
and I love
some of the people who used to work for me can attest to that. But then I tend to just very coldly look at, okay, let's calm down now. Let's take a deep breath for 24 hours. Let's look at this. I still think that it was a very rough play. Now, was it intentional? I'm having my doubts on that, but was a very rough play worthy of a yellow card? Absolutely, yes. Now, I went back also, by the way, as a reference point, guys. About 5 years ago, a Mexican player by the name of Raul Jimenez was playing in the Premier League, and he went in for a corner kick or something like that, and the other team had a Brazilian guy, Luis, I think was his name, very, very good center back, very physical. Their heads collided, and Raul Jimenez got a fracture. He didn't play for a year. Now, if you look at the play, it looks like the Brazilian guy came after him, like with full intention of hurting him. But after, repeatedly watching the plays, okay, it probably was too physical because that's this guy's characteristic. He's very, very physical, very tough center back. But okay, I didn't get a yellow card, by the way, or nothing. So, hey, something. I mean, the guy is on a stretcher there. His head is immobilized. I mean, come on, nothing, no yellow card, no nothing. So I kind of use that as a reference to. And the fact that this guy didn't get a yellow card does bother me significantly. And Nick is there laying on the floor. Guido just, let's let the play run. Hey, you got to have a guy there that is in real pain. I mean, we know Nick well enough that when he is showing pain, he's hurting. He's a guy that doesn't, roll on the ground and dive and make theater. So I have real issues with the fact that this Guido guy just let the play run and didn't give ELL, I'm just going on ELL, any kind of a warning or a card. I mean, I'll talk more about that in my final thoughts. But to me, this was it's one reason, again, why MLS, I don't think, will ever reach the top 5 because of this kind of refereeing.
Yeah. Soon after that, like, you get in your head as a former player, you get in your head like, all right, somebody's going to take care of the business out there on the field. Next time Latte Lath runs past me, something's going to happen. And Miles took care of business, not in a dirty, nasty way, but
correct.
Put him on his back, and he gets a card immediately for that.
Yeah.
If you remember, it was 2 minutes, 5 minutes. It was soon after that. There was another play at the end of the field with Dado Valenzuela cutting across. Who was it? For forget the defender that he beat, but took him out in the same manner, leg out, arm out, pulls him to the ground, same exact foul, opposite end of the field. It's a foul, but there's no card on that.
Mm-hmm.
I was stunned in that moment that there was nothing issued, especially with what had happened with Latte Lath, what happened at the other end, and then the same foul on the other side. Coach, what your thoughts on that? The consistency of refereeing in that moment.
Yeah, so I think that the issue that what that made clear to me is that to not get into like conspiracy or anything, I don't think Guido hates FC Cincinnati or wanted FC Cincinnati to lose. But as a ref, you have preconceived ideas about the way a team is going to play. Atlanta, coming off of 8 straight without a win, was desperate. They were always going to up the intensity at home. They were always going to be physical. And you would have thought that if Guido had a quick whistle on any side, it would have been that side. Yet the way the game was called, it was exactly the opposite. It was, I need to keep control of FC Cincinnati so they don't lose it, so they don't make this game too physical. And I'm going to give Atlanta United a little more leeway. And usually you see that, like I said, in reverse. The team with the more skill that's coming in with more success gets a little more of the leeway because they're expected to play. And the team that you kind of think might try to make it muddy and rough it up maybe has a quicker whistle. And so I don't know if it's because a guy like Matt Miazga, who's always talking to the refs. I don't know if Guido has a preconceived idea. I don't know if it's because the Bailey loves to boo referees, and you know what I'm saying. Anyways, I don't know if it's any of those things, but it seemed apparent to me that Guido had in his mind that FC Cincinnati was going to be the aggressors. The fact that Atlanta gets out of that match with that many fouls and that aggressive of a game without a single yellow card is just mind-blowing.
It is.
Yeah. So it was almost prophetic. If you watch the game, I watched it back again today. Twellman at the 2-minute and 41 mark says Atlanta is winless in their last 8 games, and they've scored just 4 goals in those 8 games. And that was 6 minutes before Hagglund goes down, and Atlanta goes on to score 4 goals in this one match. They continued to repeatedly say their coach has called them soft, and they were responding in that moment. Maybe that's something Noonan needs to do. I don't know. Maybe he has. And they responded in a big way in this match for sure. I want to get to one of these comments here. Derek Burdett says, as we're talking about the referee situation here, he says, I could forgive the ref if he at least gave a yellow or if they gave it on review, but they did neither. Definitely yellow, bring on the fines and suspensions. Just to address that, I was curious. So I looked up the MLS disciplinary committee and like what they could do as a result of this. And here's what I found. I don't know that anything will be done. They seem to double down on the call. There was nothing missed. There was nothing egregious. I don't know that they'll review this, but it is, according to the disciplinary committee rules of the game, it is reviewable. A play can be reviewed where officials do not see the incident and therefore do not have the opportunity to act. The committee will review any and all evidence and may act to discipline a player, i.e. an off-the-ball offense. Now, it could be argued they were both running towards the ball. It wasn't strictly off the ball. And then incidents and infractions reviewable by the MLS disciplinary committee, hands to the face, head, or neck of an opponent, which we saw later in the game, an elbow to Matt Miazga's face. It's funny that the body, the ribs, is not mentioned there, so maybe it's not reviewable. I don't know. And then later on it says serious foul play refers to aggressive force or brutality when challenging for the ball, which, again, maybe we disagree on here. Was it egregious? Was it just a play that was intentional, knock him over, or did he haul off, drop his leg, drop his shoulder, and swing? Maybe they interpret that differently, but the play sounds like it could be reviewable, not that it will be.
Can I jump in on that really quick? Because
please do.
What the pool reporter, so if you're not familiar, a pool reporter for each team can basically ask about one call on the game, and the referees will respond with some canned response that tells you nothing. That's allowed. When the pool reporter asked about that play, they said that the referee had a good view of it, and in VAR's opinion, it was not a red cardable offense, because VAR could have been like, wow, that's an orange card, that's a yellow plus. But if they're not going to recommend a yellow card, that play can't be reviewed by VAR. If Guido says, I saw the play and I didn't give even a foul, unless VAR thinks it's a red card, they can't send that to review. So the fact that Guido stood his ground in that way and said, nope, I had a good view, and VAR apparently didn't think it was a red, which I don't think is defensible, honestly, but okay, maybe you just say like, man, it's right on the edge. Leads me to believe that the MLS is just going to double down. They won't do anything about it. I don't think that the fact that he doesn't get hit in the head. Now, I could see the elbow because Guido did not see the elbow on Matt Miazga. He actually relied on the fourth official to make that call. If you notice, he didn't blow the whistle. He was going to give a throw, and then he blew the whistle and pointed out his fourth official and gave him a thumbs up. Like the fourth official was like, yeah, he got him, and you clearly see on that first replay that Latte Lath goes high with the elbow into the face, and then his arm comes out away from Matt. So like when you see the second replay, it looks like he doesn't elbow him, but that would be the one I think where Latte Lath could be in some trouble.
Yeah. Just in general, we had some comments in the chat here where, let me see here. Jay Yates, I want to put this one up here. The most frustrating part from a fan perspective is the caliber of our performance versus the crew and the egg we laid last night. Where did all that pace and precision from last week go? And I wanted to put that out there because I thought Cincinnati actually had moments where they played really, really well. I mean, they had 10 shots on goal, 29 or 30 total that didn't all hit frame. But they were creating chances and looked really good, looked pretty precise up top. Even Orishano putting a few balls that he hasn't hit well in recent weeks just past the post, like seeing his shots being dialed in. Denke on a turn hits a ball just wide. There's a defender coming in. He's going to kick his leg if he puts his foot out any farther, right? But it seemed to me that Cincinnati played really well, except for a stretch soon after the Hagglund injury, where they just looked like they were scrambling. They were chasing the ball. That's what you say as a coach all the time. Don't chase, right? Don't chase. Play your formation, get in position, and don't chase. And they were just running after ball after ball after ball for a while. So there was a segment there. My contention is, what I saw, at least anyway, is they just didn't have the pace in the back to keep up with the Latte Lath and the pace on the wings. With Atlanta. And so maybe those are because balls coming out of the midfield, we're chasing and not getting in position for. Maybe it's on the back line, maybe it's not. But we didn't have the pace to keep up when they sent balls over the top. Am I wrong there? Am I missing something?
No, I think you're right. And in fact, I mean, when we talk about how since FCC had stretches of good play, I mean, the possession time shows that too. I know it's not an indicator. You have to look at the whole game. That 63%, but which for this team is unreal. I mean, we're usually the other way around. We win games with 40% possession. So we were controlling the game, except for those times with those minutes where we fell apart. And then, of course, the other mistakes we made for third and then the fourth goal, well, you can discount that. I mean, it's game's over anyway. So I think they did play well overall. But it was just those moments of lack of focus, confusion. And like you said already, Brian, the wings were just getting overwhelmed. It's like, well, somebody do something here, guys, because we can't seem to stop them on the wings.
I'm going to give Nate a shout out with his Monday takeaways over on his Substack, Nate Gilman. If you don't follow him, he puts out an email on his Substack or whatever, an article each week. And he basically said what I was thinking, which is Atlanta is not a great matchup for FC Cincinnati in general because they rely so much on their speed in transition. And that's probably FC Cincinnati's biggest weak spot. Number one, because Obi chases the ball a lot side to side. So there's gaps out there in the midfield. And then number two, the only center back they have that has any legitimate pace is Miles Robinson. So it's not great for them anyway. Then you give Atlanta a 2-goal lead when they can really just sit back, rope a dope a little bit and wait to swing haymakers. And it really, you just made the match exactly what Atlanta needed on the night at home on turf, finally having a lead and just getting to kick balls over the top and see like a lot of the chances that they created were like hopeful balls that just like bounced in behind, unless, Pavel Buka was turning around on the midline and hitting a ball out for a corner kick, and then the fact that they scored on set pieces, things like that. Definitely some mental lapses, but I don't think overall the team played poorly. I think that they had, I think Atlanta had a bit of luck. If you watch that ball get through for that second goal, the fact that it gets through like that many people, Matt Miazga had just taken a step And if he hadn't, like, he would have been able to kick that ball away, but he like couldn't get his foot back up to move it. Right. So like, I just think that this was a 4-goal game, but it looks worse on the score sheet than it actually was. Not to say that there weren't problems, but it played into Atlanta's hands because of those early goals.
Yeah. And, we have not mentioned Dado Valenzuela's goal. That guy was cooking inside the 18, slicing and dicing defenders like we haven't seen a player do since, Denke's goal a few weeks ago, and just putting balls right at Guzan. I think the finishing touch is going to come from him. We'll talk about his play a little bit later, but we do have to mention his play inside the box, his creativity, and his all-out effort to slide and get his foot on the ball that came across to put it past Guzan finally for the second goal. And you mentioned the third goal that Atlanta scored off the corner that Pavel Buka played. I don't know what he was thinking. It was a long ball. Sure, he had a guy in front of him, but he's played out of pressure tighter than that before and plays a long ball, terrible ball, out of play. It gives them the corner to set up that goal. What I saw on Atlanta's third goal off that corner was, we mentioned it before, the ball across to a player that Orishano could not defend, could not jump with. Coach, I wanted to ask you this question because what I saw a number of times on that replay was Lucas Engel, and I think it was Miles Robinson, with his arm around him there, watching the ball. Like, is that a normal thing? Like, let's stay together, stay tight here? Or was he like, he spaced it there for a second?
Yeah, honestly, as a coach, I often tell my players, if you're not going to be able to get the ball, go to your center back and give him a little cuddle and just be like, good job, buddy. I hope you can get it. And I think that's what Lucas was doing there. If you can't tell I'm joking, it was like, it made me want to pick my TV up off of the little rack on and slam it over my knee, because Lucas Engel just leaves his mark. Bartosz Schließ, he just decides, I don't need to stay goal side of him. I'm good. He goes not goal side of Miles Robinson. And then just for good measure, because being out of position wasn't good enough, he actually puts his arm on his shoulder, and you can tell with some force. He's like, Miles turns a little bit, like he's pulling Miles so that Miles can't make good contact on the ball. And like, Miles is trying to kick the ball as Lucas Engel is fouling him. I don't know what Engel was doing. I don't know if he thought Miles was an opponent. I don't have any idea. I hope that there are some really hard conversations, though, in the film room between Matt and Roman, between Miles and Lucas Engel, between Orishano and everybody, because I know he's not going to be able to win that header, but he doesn't even jump. He's like, oh, that guy's tall. I think I'm good. Like, man, at least get into him, like go up with him, make the header across a little bit difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll wrap up our game conversation there, the recap. There's so much more to talk about, and we'll get into talking tactics a little bit, because there was a player on the field in Dado Valenzuela that I thought changed the game in a different sort of way, and I want to talk about his play here in just a moment. Before we get there, I do want to thank Beyond Exercise, our second half show sponsor. They're a local physical therapy and fitness business that helps people stay active and injury-free. In fact, they've helped some of our local MLS, MLS Next, and FCC Academy players with their health and performance needs. Check out their suite of services at gobeyondexercise.com.
Is Nick going to be visiting him again?
I don't know. Do they work with broken ribs? Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know.
So, yeah.
Dry needling fixes everything.
Oh man. So Coach, I want to toss it to you for our talking tactics segment, as we always do, and talk a little bit about when I saw the starting lineup. I know that I was excited to see Dado out there. Jose might have not been as excited in the moment. We had some conversation about that, but having him out there seemed to change play in some sort of way. And so I pass it to you to talk about what you saw from Dado Valenzuela.
Yeah, so I want to talk about Dado, but also the general tactical structure, because when they come out in the sword formation, normally I'm like, formations, like it all depends. Is Dado going to push a little higher, drop a little bit in? But in this one, he very distinctly stuck in that right half space, which meant Evander stuck over in the left half space, and they basically split the field in half for those two. Evander very rarely ventured over to the other side of the field. And what that does, and the good side of that, is it simplifies the overload offloads that you're trying to create, right? On one side, you have Evander working with the wing back on that side angle, the holding mid over there, which was Obi, and then Kevin Danke stretching the pitch on the right-hand side. It's going to be Dado, Luca Orishano, Miles Robinson once Nick Hagglund went out hurt, and Kevin Danke, right? Because he runs the whole way. So it simplifies that. And what I didn't know Dado had in his locker was the intentional way in which he was drifting in and out of space based on the runs of Buka and Orishano. He was so good at noticing when one of those guys was moving and getting into the space that they were creating. So like right at the 3-minute mark, an easy one if you want to go watch the replay, right at the 3-minute mark, FCC swings from left to right. This is when Nick Hagglund's still on the pitch. So the ball goes to Hags. Buka is checking to the ball. Orishano has his heels on the chalk, and Dado is starting to push that center back away to give Buka and Luca some space. When the ball goes to Orishano, then Dado checks back to him to give him an option to combine, which and Kevin Danke makes a good run towards the corner to pull that center back to create that gap. And that allows Buka to fill that space that Danke and Dado just created. Luca Orishano comes in on his left, plays the ball over the top for Buka, and but for a poor touch, he could have been like right in on goal. Now he salvaged the second touch, and that's the play that led to Dado megging that defender and then forcing the save at the near post. In the 30th minute, there was a similar situation, but this time the ball went to Miles. Luca was wide. Buka checks two. Dada's pressing forward in the half space. You see the pattern? Repeatable patterns of play. But this time, Miles just spots the window and plays it directly into Dado. That's the one where Dado heel flicks it to Kevin Danke and then runs in behind, gets the return pass, and forces a shot and forces another good save at the near post. So it's really good repeatable patterns of play based on Dado's intelligence along with Buka. But that's the common thread there. By continuing to play through Dado, it means Evander is not getting touches in high leverage spots. 46% of FCC attacks came down the right, where Dado Valenzuela was. When FCC goes to the right to Orishano or Buka, they have Orishano, they have Buka, they have Miles Robinson, a great passing center back over there. They have Dado, they have Kevin Danke. When they play to the left, it's Lucas Angle, who's had his moments. It's Obi Wobodo, who we know is not really an offensive threat, right? It's Hadeb, which is, once Hagglund was hurt, and he's probably the worst passing center back on the team in my estimation. So they're not incentivized to go to the left. So they can play this way and it can be okay. But what they need to do is when they go to the right, they need to have guys like Orishana and Buka and Dado looking for that second or third pass to go into zone 14 and Evander. They need to be hitting those switches either all the way to Angle, then combine quickly just 2-man game with Evander, or they need to do their little combination play. But instead of Dado Valenzuela heel flicking it to Danke and then running in behind and Danke playing it back to him, can Danke open up his hips and find Evander there to come in so that Evander is getting those touches in high leverage situations? Evander ended the match with 16 shot creating actions, which is phenomenal. You think this is great. The problem is a lot of those are not the primary pass. It's the pass that led to a pass. And a lot of those were dead ball situations. So Evander is not getting the ball in a place where he can be creating the assists or creating the shots the way FC Cincinnati played in this match. Although I like what they did with Dado, so I'll be interested to see if they can find a way to make this work.
Yeah, it's encouraging to me that a young player like Dado can step up in that instance and make those things happen, knowing you've got a guy like Evander opposite him who can create on his own, it's better playing off of players for sure. And maybe it was, I think Twellman even said it on the broadcast, is Evander drawing attention away from Dado so that Dado can get in those spaces. And I don't think that was necessarily the case, because there was a moment early on in the match that Evander got a ball and there was nobody within 10 yards of him. And he takes a shot from about 27 yards out when he probably could have dribbled about 7 or 8 more yards to get in. He was that wide open. So was he drawing attention? Perhaps in that moment. Didn't seem like anybody cared that Evander was on the field there, which is strange to me. So it is encouraging to me that a guy like Dado can come in and perform that way. I wonder, though, if those two positions can play interchangeably, if they're a little bit more fluid, like we saw last year when Kubo and Orishano were up top and they kind of play, and Lucho, they kind of played, the three of them were kind of interchangeable. Evander and Dotto potentially players that are interchangeable in that instance, or are they pretty dominant left side, right side players?
I don't see anything that makes me believe that Dotto would be better on the right than on the left, because he's right-footed. So you'd think playing in the half space where you want to be coming onto your dominant foot. But now you might also say that Evander is better on the left for the same reason, right? But Evander's pretty good with both feet. So I think more fluidity can help there. I also think putting the onus on Evander to say you need to find times when you can drift to that side. After the 71st minute when Obino Wobodo was subbed out, Dotto moved actually to play like a dual 8 with Buka, and it opened up the field for Evander. 6 of Evander's 16 shot creating actions happened after that time. And only one or two of them were dead ball situations. Like he was cooking at that point. So I think that finding ways to have them both on the pitch, but not occupying the same space, whether it's switching right and left, whether it's Evander just going and creating an extra overload, whether it's at times letting Dotto Valenzuela push higher as a forward or drop deeper as like more of a number 8, I think could be good. But overall, even if they played the exact same way they played, right and left, but the guys over on the right knew that they needed to be looking to, after they do their cute combinations, bing, 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 get the ball to Evander, then go. I think that would be what needs to happen. The whole offense, when it really started working, when Pat Noonan came in, was how can we get Lucho Acosta on the ball in high leverage situations? And they just haven't figured that out quite with Evander yet.
Yeah, we have a couple comments in the chat about let me find it, about Dotto. Jay Yates says Dotto's a joy to watch. He's shifty, stalks the ball like a predator. I think that's exciting just to see him out there. Is anybody willing to agree with me yet and say that this is Dotto Valenzuela's breakout season, or are we not quite there yet? Because
I'm not quite there yet, but I keep seeing him grow. I mean, he is growing. The more minutes he gets, the more he seems confident, more willing to take risks, be more creative. So maybe it's just a question of time. If you give him more time, more starting opportunities, then maybe he does become. I'm not quite there yet, Brian, but ask me this in July, August.
Oh, I will, Jose. I will. Coach, we did have another question from one of our CSTers about ball progression through the midfield. And I think if I remember correctly, the question was asked early in the match after Obi dribbled almost coast to coast, at least through 4 or 5 defenders, and he just had space and kept going. And then soon after that, things crumbled, as we've already talked about in the show. What did you see with ball progression with Buka and Obi at the 6 and the 8 there, and then maybe how that changed this game with Dotto in?
Yeah, so interestingly, when I went back for the rewatch with Justin Blair's question in my mind about ball progression in the midfield, I also had a listener get in touch with me, Mike Prentice, about a similar thing. Mike's question was, are they not able to do it, or are they not trying? So that's what I was looking for. And it looked to me like the instructions were, swing to side, and can you go up the left? Nope. Okay, swing it. Can you go up the right? Nope. Okay, swing it. Can you go up the left? There was no real effort to progress through the midfield. And I think that that's okay, other than you have to be able to do it every once in a while, right? It's like if you only throw fastballs, you're going to have home runs hit off of you. You got to throw the changeup, right? And so when you had a moment like in the 19th minute where Obi gets on the half turn and dribbles, and the Atlanta defense is totally on their heels, they have no idea what's happening because Obi dribbles 70 yards and then plays the ball to Lucas Engel. That's actually the play where then Lucas Engel gives it to Evander and he's wide open, but he hits a shot from 60 yards out, over the goal. But, those kinds of moments, you have to be able to do that so that the opponent respects that, and that gives you more space on the wings. But I think that my cursory look at it when I did the rewatch is that right now, Pat Noonan is not asking his players to solve that problem in that way. He's saying, swing the ball side to side and see which wing you can get up, which I think is okay, except so often this team's wing backs, whether it's Lucas Engel, who has been very spotty for me, like especially defensively, he thinks he's faster than he is, but that's a different story. And then on the right, Orshano, I think had a pretty good game coming inside, combining, but when it's Yedlin, once he subbed in, it was like, okay. So again, like if that is your strategy, then I think you have a personnel problem, Pat.
Yeah. So there's a couple comments that I've highlighted from earlier in the show, like right at the top of the show. We got one from our friend Alejandro Delgado at Nacion FCC, who says Noonan needs to stop experimenting on Orishano at the right back. The right back should be Yedlin's spot. You spoke to that just briefly a moment ago. What would you say in response, either one of you, in response to this?
Interesting enough, Alejandro, at the beginning of the year, I was fortunate to be on the show. He asked me about this, and I said, well, I think Yedlin should be the starter there and then bring in Powell later in the game, to provide maybe a little bit more creativity up front. That was at the beginning. Now we're here, and I'm saying, I think Orellana should still be on the right wing back. His defensive capabilities are still iffy from my point of view, but with Yedlin, you really don't get much in the last third. So, okay, what do we do? Well, I'd like to create more opportunities up front, so I'll take the risk with Orellana not being that good defensively, and then hopefully somebody swings in, or Obi does this disruptive thing to prevent that play from happening. So my take right now is leave Orellana there, right wing back, and create opportunities up front and take a little bit of risk on the back line.
Coach,
Jose.
Before you answer, Coach, can I take a guess at what you might say? And you can answer yes or no.
How much are you willing to wager on this guess? Let's go.
I'm all of it, Pat. I'm wagering all of it, right? We're going 4-back. We shift to a 4-back. Yedlin, that right back spot in a 4-back system, belongs to Yedlin. It pushes Orishano higher up as a wing and keeps them both on the field. Yes or no, Coach?
That is 100% what I was going to say. I agree completely with Alejandro, but not in the way that he's saying it. He is saying right wing back, I think, is Yedlin. I'm saying, start Yedlin. He's one of your higher priced players. He's a veteran. He's played pretty well defensively, but not as a right wing back, because Jose said he doesn't give you much in the final third. That's like saying you don't get much sun in Alaska in December. I mean, like Yedlin is the 23 and a half hours of nighttime in Alaska in the final third. He is a black hole up there, and he doesn't give the ball away, to his credit. He just steps on it and passes it backwards all the time. But that's why he is so steady. I would say absolutely. Also, he has a pretty good long passing capability, so he can hit some long passes from there. And I just don't think, if you're going to have Obi Wobodo on the pitch and you're going to pay him all this money and extend him and be like, he is one of the best defensive center midfielders in the league, then why do you need 3 excellent center backs and the best defensive center midfielder in the league? Either one of those things isn't true, or you don't need all those guys.
I agree with you in a 4-back defensive line. Yes. Yeah. But if he insists on being on a 5, then I still stick to keep Orellana there.
I agree completely. Yep.
Because then you put Yedlin there, nothing happens on the right side in the final third.
And then the other comment I wanted to throw up here was from Jay Yates, again, early in the show, that he thought it was the most aggressive sub pattern that he's seen from Noonan, putting in offensive talent late in the game to just push and stretch and try and go for the game. We saw Kai Kamara, I thought was interesting, a 40-year-old striker against a 40-year-old goalkeeper who got the better of who. Would have been fun if they had a moment there. Would have been fun to see. But yeah, it was good to see Noonan go for it and not sit back and just walk away. We didn't walk away with any points, but they didn't park the bus to prevent more goals. We tried to go for them. So it was good to see. Good shout there, Jay. We do have another match coming up this week. We've talked at length about the Atlanta match. We've talked a lot of tactics that may lead into this Dallas match and even DC coming up on Saturday. Just to give a little preview of Dallas, we'll talk a little bit, but before we talk too much, I want to throw a shout to Jeff Tebbets from Jersey Swap, who recorded a little promo for the show this week. So let me throw this up on the screen, and here we go.
Hey guys, Jeff Tebbets once again, host of the Jersey Swap. Short week for the Orange and Blue, and that means a short week for the podcast here. We'll have Buzz Carrick from the Third Degree podcast to talk FC Dallas before Wednesday's match. Do the boys from D-Town have what it takes to upset the apple cart and hand FCC their first home loss of the season? Was the roster repaired well enough for brand new head coach Eric Quill? And of course, we'll address the Lucha-sized elephant in the room. So join me this week and we can trade threads again.
All right. Thanks to Jeff for that. And the Lucho size elephant was a comment that, that caught us off guard earlier in the show as we watched that. So Dallas comes in, their last 5. They've got a win, a draw, a loss, a draw, a loss. Seems like they're on pace for another draw at TQL Stadium. We'll see what happens. They have a record of 4-6-4. They're sitting at 11th in the Western Conference. And surprisingly, Lucho Acosta is sitting there as one of their leading scorers, but with 3 goals to his name, to his credit, and 0 assists, which was shocking to me. So as much as we've talked about having a star-powered, fire-powered offense that's not clicking on all cylinders yet, you've got a guy in Lucho Acosta who was Cincinnati's offensive firepower and creative player that's not creating seemingly a whole lot in Dallas. Jose, I know you've been watching Dallas a little bit. You've been preparing for an article, a preview article coming out, I believe, tomorrow. What do you see from FC Dallas that you can kind of alert us to as we watch the match on Wednesday night?
Well, I mean, they brought in some, key acquisitions that if you see them play right now as individuals, they're very good. I mean, you have Shaq Moore in the back, Anderson Julio, also kind of a wing forward. You have a guy by the name of Ramiro, Brazilian midfielder. Lalas, I know I'm going to mess up his name. Abubakar, center back. So they brought in a lot of really good midfielders, defensive people, and of course we have Lucho Acosta himself. But it's a lot of new faces. I mean, more I think than we brought in last year, even this year. So my theory again is they're taking time to gel. The coach also changed the system. He's adopted a high risk attacking style, quick transitions, aggressive pressing. He wants more fluid movement in the final third, which is not happening yet. By the way, they the games I saw, they were getting tripped up in the final third consistently. So they're not creating the opportunities yet. However, let's talk about a little bit about Lucho. Even though his stats are just absolutely miserable, I was surprised too, by the way. What I heard, because I didn't watch the game, is that in the Open Cup game against New York Red Bulls that he played really well. And he finally scored. He hadn't scored since March 29th. So he finally scored. Didn't get an assist, but he did score. And in FOTMOD, and I know Coach doesn't like these scores. I mean, he got an 8.2. Now, whether or not that's a good score or a bad score, FOTMOD knows what they're doing. I don't think the issue is that. I think the issue is that they're seeing something that this guy is playing well. And he didn't play this past weekend, by the way, because he had yellow card accumulations. So he's going to be well rested. You can have a Lucho that's well rested, that apparently is starting to get really good again. Apparently he's been nursing an ankle. And he's going to come in here trying to prove something, guys. I mean, I don't care what you say, but here's a guy that just didn't like what happened here. We know all he said about all right and all that. And okay, fine, that's water on the bridge now. But he's out here to prove something. And they know that as a team, as a club, they need to start showing results for all these players they brought in. They're gelling. It's taking some time. I mean, they have, let me see, 15 goals scored and 23 against. So, they had a -8 right now. But that could change. And again, I go back to what I keep saying over and over. I sound like a broken record. This team sometimes tends to play to the level of their opposition. And so you're going to have a motivated Lucho, a rested Lucho, a team that's probably still reeling from what the heck happened to us in Atlanta. This could be a trap game. Now, I'm not predicting any score here, but I'm concerned that all of a sudden Lucho is finally going to explode. This team is going to gel, and we could be in a world of hurt. Now, the good news is that their backline is not that good. Even with all the acquisitions they have, apparently, they're just not stopping the opportunities. So, will our offense be up to penetrating that defense that's not so good? Well, let's hope so, because otherwise it could be a low-scoring game.
Very much so. Coach, a player like Lucho coming back into town who plays well, typically with the chip on his shoulder, goes out there, is familiar with the back line for the most part. Maybe Cincinnati plays Flores and Hadeb and a lot of guys that he's unfamiliar with. I'm not advocating for that, but he's familiar with the back line, training against them for years in Cincinnati. What do you see what do you anticipate out of Lucho this week?
I think that he's going to have a good game. I think that we've seen time and time again when he has a point to prove, he plays well, but that doesn't mean he has to score or get an assist, and I would take that. I think that when you have an attacker like Lucho that is so deceptively quick and the ball sticks to his foot, I think actually having trained together time and time again actually gives the advantage to the defender. They have that understanding of that little extra half space. If you don't train against a guy like Lucho and you see he's not fast, you try to play tight on him, and then all of a sudden he's by you because he's got a quick burst. And I think the defenders will kind of know. But also, we've seen time and time that it sometimes doesn't matter what you do. Like Lucho's gonna find a way. But FC Cincinnati, I think, needs to not fall into the trap where they are trying to prove a point back to Lucho. Lucho cannot do it by himself. He is not a Lionel Messi quality player where if he has half a sight at goal, it's a goal. Right? It's like you have to let him get into the box and dribble and dice you up for it to work. So if they play their game and they play within themselves and don't like try to over focus on Lucho, I think it should be fine. But that said, FC Cincinnati's been so erratic, and FC Dallas actually has not given up a ton of high quality chances by I call it coach's index, where I compare the non-penalty XG. Like their defense has actually been pretty good relative to the opponents that they're playing in terms of the chances they're allowing. So I expect FC Cincinnati to probably struggle to create, and they need to stay disciplined and not overcommit bodies forward. And then all of a sudden you have Lucho running in transition, because we know what can happen then.
Yeah. And, maybe Lucho, I'm hoping Lucho has a game like we saw many a time in Cincinnati where he slices and dices and no one else is there, and he runs into finally the fifth or the sixth defender and has nowhere to go. So let him play his game, but let's just always get that last defender in his way when he's ready to make that final move. Happy to see that. Guys, we're getting right up against our 10 o'clock hour. So I want to skip the one section. I'm going to actually make that my final thought. I'll save that in a second. We're going to get into our final thoughts. If you enjoy what we bring here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk on Monday nights, if you enjoy jersey swap and soccer in our area and the other content you can find on our YouTube channel, we would love to have you join us over on Patreon. You'll get more content there. There's a free tier. There's a $5 a month tier. You can join our Growler Cup. If you're interested in joining us on Patreon, visit us at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/support, and we'd love to have you over there. We thank you for those patrons who do support the show and give to help us create the content that we do. Gentlemen, let's wrap up our show now with our final thoughts. Jose, let's start with you.
I won't rehash a lot of what we talked about the game, other than to say I continue to think that there was a lack of leadership there, because when confusion hits you, you have to keep your head in the game. I mean, this is going to happen time and time again. And to me, it was inexcusable that nobody or nobodies stepped up and said, okay, let's keep it. So I will continue to mention that, because I think that was key in the confusion that was created. Now, with that said, did Latte Lath do a nasty, dirty play? That was my feeling yesterday and this morning, and after reading more and watching the video, I said, well, it was a very physical play. And yes, he did lead with his elbow. I think the biggest thing to me is the refereeing. We talked about it on the show, but I'll say it again. It is inexcusable that absolutely nothing happened during or after that play. I mean, if MLS continues to think we want to be a top 5 in the league, then you know what? You have got to fix that. You cannot claim you're a top 5 league. And not to say, by the way, that La Liga or Premier League have super coaches constantly. They don't. They also have turkeys over there. I've seen the games. But it is a higher level of refereeing. And they let certain plays go and certain plays they don't. I mean, they seem to be much more discerning than our refs here. So until that is fixed, please don't come to me and tell me we're going to be one of the top 5 leagues. Not with this kind of refereeing. It's not going to happen. And if we let players like this get away with this stuff, I mean, what else are we going to expect? So, I mean, that's my final thought here. I love MLS. I love soccer. I watch soccer all over the world. But I want to see this league succeed. I do want it to be one of the top 5 of the leagues, but this has got to be fixed, or it's just a joke.
Yeah. Good word there, Jose. As one who's a fan of world soccer, world football, and watched many a league, I think you bring some credibility to that statement. So thanks for that, Coach. Final thoughts.
Yeah, there have been lots of talk, especially if you watch the Sunday night broadcast, about FC Cincinnati and whether they're stuck in second gear or have a higher level. Taylor Twellman mentioned it like 30 times. Bradley Wright Phillips and Dax McCarty got in a little bit of an argument about whether this is who they are or whether FC Cincinnati has a higher level to hit. Well, I think if you're going to hit that higher level, you need to do it within the next few matches. You have a few matches in a row where there's no easy match in MLS, but you have Dallas at home, then you have DC, which is a winnable game, New England and Montreal on the road, but both winnable games. Those are the matches where you got to figure this out, because then you go into a meat grinder: Orlando, Chicago, Columbus, Miami, RSL, on the road, and then Miami again. So now's the time, fellas. If you have another gear, if you want to show Bradley Wright Phillips that you can indeed click into a high octane offense, now is the time to figure it out.
Yeah, I think I heard Twellman on air say, he was recapping Cincinnati's season and saying they have 8 wins of 1 goal. And he said it's not a fluke. This is who Cincinnati is. This is how they play, and would love to see more out of them in the next part of the season here. So, thanks, Coach. Thanks, Jose, for joining us tonight. My final thought, just to wrap up, I alluded to it earlier. We're going to talk about soccer in our area, and so I just bumped this down to my final thought. You probably saw the news that Corbin Bone and Kenny Walker signed with Kingshammer FC, which may or may not mean much in Cincinnati. I'm excited to see those 2 players real soon, because they are traveling here to Fort Wayne to play Fort Wayne FC next Saturday. So actually, don't tell anybody this, but I'm going to not watch the FC Cincinnati match live that night, because I want to go to the Fort Wayne FC match, watch them play. We've got a Fort Wayne Footy podcast going on here in Fort Wayne, but I get to see Corbin Bone and Kenny Walker back on the pitch, and so I'm excited about that. So anyway, thanks for joining us here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. We'd love to hear from you. Send us a message. I know you've been in the chat tonight. Love to hear from you in the chat on these live shows. Get in touch with us at feedback@Cincinnati Soccer Talk. If you've got questions for us to address on the Monday night show, you got questions for Jeff Tebbetts for Jersey Swap, or questions for Coach and his Talking Tactics segments. Thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you next time on Cincinnati Soccer Talk.